Well, the cab has moved further down the street. I wonder whether the folks are going to emerge from a bit further down. Yes, it appears so. David Spears and all concerned. Good to see them coming out the back door, Sam.
Good to see you.
Back door, David. Bon voyage, Karen. Bill Thompson for Outside Insiders. This is what it's come to at their ABC. The journos arrive and depart apparently via the back door to avoid the horrendous gauntlet of an old bloke with a GoPro. It's an absolutely miserable morning in Melbourne this Sunday. I can't wait for global warming to start kicking in. I'd hoped to ask one or more of the panellists their view on the recent ABC News article that referred to Jacinta Price as the Celtic Walpurgis senator, to inquire whether they thought that the ABC should begin parsing the racial background of everyone who appears on ABC News. There was a gentleman on the panel this morning, Jack Lattimore, who's a journo with The Age, who was introduced as an Indigenous person. I'd be interested. If the ABC News organisation is going to engage in parsing the racial background of Senator Jacinta Price, maybe they could let us know the racial background of everyone who appears on any ABC News program, including, let's say, for example, Jack Lattimore. Let's say, for example, Stan Grant. Anytime there's a favourable comment about an Indigenous sports person in Australia, ABC News should engage in the attitude they've taken with Jacinta Price and pass the racial background of all the sports people that they mention in their reporting. I arrived in Australia as a 13-year-old in 1963. My dad was a US soldier based in Newcastle during the war. He married my mother, an Australian woman who had a child in 1945, my sister. They went back to the States. I was born in Fort Eustis, Virginia in 1949. We lived in America for a few years, then we went to Germany when my dad was called back into the US Army because of the Korean War. lived in Germany for a couple of years, then back to the States in the mid-50s. The marriage failed and Mum brought me back to Australia in 1963, and I've lived here most of the time since then. I became an Australian citizen in 1967. I grew up in America during the period of segregation, where African American people had to ride at the back of the bus or sit in special areas in restaurants. The schools were segregated. There's video of Joe Biden making some comment about he didn't want to have to send his kids to mixed schools. But that's the environment that I grew up in when I was under 10 and under 13. I came to Australia in 1963 when my mother brought me here, and I was delighted to find that there was no legal segregation in Australia. I appreciate that there is a historical aspect to the Australian circumstances. But as far as legal rights are concerned, for most of my life here, people of all races and backgrounds have the same legal rights as everyone else. It concerns me, and look, I remember the mid-late 60s and early 70s when the Springbok rugby union team would occasionally come to Australia, and the lefty demonstrators went berserk against the idea of apartheid. Well, bugger me, 50 odd years later, the lefty segment of society seems to be all in favour of apartheid and segregation and special rights for some people based on their racial backgrounds. I utterly reject that situation. I think everyone should be treated the same, irrespective of their race. I have been called racist by some people on Twitter for espousing that sort of view. I generally regard the term racist as a meaningless insult spouted by people who are bigots and prejudiced themselves. Good morning. Bill Thompson. I do a thing called Outside Insiders.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. Mate, can I ask you a quick ABC related question?
Sure.
Joe O'Brien does the 9 o'clock news session on ABC TV.
Yeah.
And he opens with words to the effect of coming to you from the land of the Gadigal people. I've seen Ros Child doing the ABC 9 o'clock news, and she doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Does ABC allow their broadcasters to do their own personal ideological announcements at the start of their programs?
I don't know. Don't know the answer to your question.
Look, I'm perfectly happy that people do that, but I think it would be helpful if they would also say, coming to you from the taxpayer-funded studios of ABC, and all ABC staff taxpayer-funded, so if there could be an acknowledgement of the taxpayers' funding of everyone at ABC, I think that would be helpful.
You think people don't know that the ABC's
I think if people are going to make their own personal observations about ideological things, that they should also acknowledge the funding they get from taxpayers. Anyway, mate, thanks very much for your time.
You're not really, so you're recording this?
I do it outside Insiders.
Yeah, so you're not really asking me a question.
No, I'm asking you a question. Do you think it's appropriate for...
That wasn't the question you asked me.
Do you think it's appropriate for ABC staff to promote their own ideological viewpoints?
Then why are you asking me?
Thanks, mate. Have a good one. Bill Thompson for Outside Insiders. On a delightful Sunday morning in rain-drenched, chilly Melbourne. I can't wait for global warming to set in.